They sent an idle bride to shame the cowboy, but she built his ranch with bare hands. Clara arrived at the ranch just as the sun was rising. The golden light stretched across the vast land, turning the rolling fields into a sea of shimmering yellow and green. She had never seen anything so wide and open. It was beautiful, but also intimidating. The ranch was huge, much bigger than any farm she had known in her quiet town. The fences stretched for miles, and the barns and stables were massive, their wood darkened by years of sun and wind. Clara's heart raced with excitement, but also with a little fear. She knew she was entering a world far different from the one she had grown up in. Her family had arranged this marriage, and already the town was talking. They called her an idle bride, a girl sent only to secure a wealthy husband. They whispered behind closed doors about her supposed laziness, saying she had never worked hard in her life. Clara had heard some of these things before she left home, and the words stung. She did not consider herself lazy. She was ready to prove that she could work hard and be more than what people expected. Yet, standing at the edge of the ranch, she could not help but wonder if she could truly handle this life. As she walked toward the house, the wind carried the faint smell of hay, horses, and earth. The sounds of the ranch were new and alive. Cows lowing in the distance, a horse neighing in the barn, and the soft creak of a wooden gate swinging in the breeze. Clara felt a mixture of awe and nervousness. She could see Ethan, her soon-to-be husband, standing outside the main house watching her approach. He was tall and strong, with broad shoulders and a weathered face that spoke of years working under the sun. His eyes were sharp, and they seemed to take in everything at once. Clara felt a small shiver run down her spine. She had heard stories about Ethan being a hard-working and serious man, and now she was about to live with him, not just meet him. Ethan did not rush to greet her. He watched quietly, his hands resting on his hips. Clara tried to smile politely, hoping to break the tension. "Hello," she said softly. Ethan nodded once, not saying a word. The silence was heavy. Clara felt her confidence waver for a moment. Was he judging her already? Did he believe the rumors about her being lazy? She told herself to stay calm and strong. She had come here to prove herself, not just to Ethan, but to everyone who doubted her. The house was large but simple. The walls were lined with wooden panels, and the floors creaked as Clara stepped inside. It smelled of wood polish and animals, a mix she wasn't used to but somehow found comforting. Ethan showed her to the room that would be hers. It was modest, with a small bed, a wooden wardrobe, and a window that looked out over the ranch. Clara took a deep breath. This would be her home now. She promised herself that she would make the most of it, no matter how hard it would be. The first days were difficult. Clara had never done chores like these before. Feeding the animals, cleaning the stables, carrying heavy buckets of water. It was exhausting. Her hands were rough and blistered by the end of the day, and her body ached in ways she had never known. She sometimes wondered if she had made a mistake coming here. The townspeople's words echoed in her mind. Idle bride, useless, weak. But every time she felt discouraged, she reminded herself why she had come. She was not weak. She could learn, and she could work. She just needed time. Ethan observed her silently during these first days. He rarely offered help or praise, letting Clara struggle through the tasks. Some might have called it harsh, but Clara understood that this was part of ranch life. He wanted to see if she could handle it, if she would give up or keep trying. There were moments when she felt frustrated and alone, especially when the ranch hands, though polite, glanced at her with skepticism. Clara could feel their doubt, but she refused to let it break her spirit. She remembered the wide fields and the strong, steady horses and told herself that she could belong here if she worked hard enough. One morning, while Clara was fetching water from the well, she noticed a group of townspeople standing at the edge of the property watching her. She knew they were whispering about her, probably thinking she was too weak or unfit for ranch life. She felt a flash of embarrassment, but instead of turning away, she held her head high and continued her work. Each bucket she carried felt heavier, not just because of the water, but because of the weight of expectation on her shoulders. Yet, with every step, she felt a small spark of determination growing inside her. She would show them that she was capable. She would show Ethan, too. One afternoon, a problem arose that would test her courage. A young horse had wandered into a muddy area near the creek and was stuck, struggling to free itself. The horse panicked, kicking and thrashing, and Clara knew that if she did not act quickly, it could injure itself badly. Without thinking, she ran toward the horse. Her heart pounded as she approached, feeling fear and urgency at the same time. She talked to the horse softly, calming it with gentle words. Then, using every ounce of strength she had, she managed to pull the horse free from the mud. By the time she stepped back, covered in dirt and sweat, the horse was safe. Ethan appeared beside her, his face unreadable. He said nothing at first, but there was a hint of respect in his eyes that Clara did not miss. For the first time, she felt that maybe she could earn his trust. That night, as she washed up and prepared for bed, Clara reflected on her first days at the ranch. They had been exhausting, painful, and challenging, but she had survived. She had faced judgment, physical strain, and her own doubts, yet she was still standing. The wide fields no longer felt intimidating. They felt like a place where she could grow and learn. She was determined to continue, no matter what obstacles lay ahead. She realized that this ranch, these animals, and even Ethan, were part of a world she wanted to understand and be part of. She was no longer just an idle bride in name. She was beginning to prove that she had strength, courage, and determination. By the end of that first week, Clara had gained small victories. She learned to saddle the horses properly, repair a broken fence, and even help with the milking. Each small success built her confidence. Ethan began to speak to her in small ways, offering instructions and advice, but never condescension. Clara noticed the shift in the ranch hands, too. Their skeptical glances turned into nods of approval when she completed difficult tasks. The town gossip would not disappear overnight, but Clara knew that actions spoke louder than words. She had started her journey, and she was ready to face whatever challenges came next. And so, Clara's first days on the ranch ended not with triumph, but with the quiet understanding that this life would be hard, demanding, and full of surprises. Yet she felt a deep sense of hope. The wide fields, the strong horses, and even the stern gaze of Ethan were not obstacles. They were opportunities. Opportunities to prove herself, to grow stronger, and to become more than what anyone expected. She went to bed that night exhausted but proud, ready for the next day. Ready to keep building her place in this new life. Clara was no longer just a girl arriving at a ranch. She was a woman beginning to shape her destiny with her own hands. The days at the ranch continued, each one bringing new challenges for Clara. She woke before the sun, her body still aching from the hard work of the previous week, but she refused to let fatigue stop her. The early morning air was crisp and fresh, carrying the scent of grass, soil, and animals. Clara could hear the cows lowing in the distance and the roosters crowing from the barn. The sounds reminded her that life here moved to its own rhythm, a rhythm she had to learn quickly if she wanted to belong. The first chore of the morning was feeding the livestock. Clara carried heavy buckets of grain, her arms burning with effort. She had already learned how to approach the animals without startling them, but every day brought a new lesson. Some cows were shy and skittish, others stubborn and uncooperative. Clara sometimes got bumped or nudged, spilling the grain or nearly falling. Each mistake made her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she reminded herself that learning was part of the process. She could not let pride stop her from trying again. Ethan observed her quietly, walking among the other ranch hands as they went about their tasks. He did not speak much, but his sharp eyes watched everything she did. Clara sometimes felt his gaze like a weight on her shoulders. She wondered if he doubted her abilities, if he thought she truly did not belong, but rather than shrinking back, she focused on the work in front of her. She learned to carry the bucket steadily, to calm the animals with gentle words, and to anticipate their movements. Slowly, she began to notice small improvements. The cows seemed more comfortable around her, and the feed was spilling less often. Each tiny success gave her courage. One afternoon, a bigger challenge arrived than anything Clara had faced before. A fence had broken near the pasture, leaving the horses dangerously close to the edge of a steep hill. Ethan had been out inspecting the land, and when he returned, he immediately called Clara over. "We need to fix this now," he said in a firm voice. His tone was serious, but not unkind. Clara nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. She had watched Ethan repair fences many times, but now it was her turn to do it herself. The sun beat down on her as she lifted heavy posts, hammered nails, and tied wires. The work was exhausting, and the sweat poured down her face. Her hands were blistered, and her muscles ached, but she refused to give up. The horses wandered nearby, watching her with quiet patience. Clara could hear the distant whispers of the town again, imagining what people might be saying if they could see her now. Would they call her lazy still? She forced the thought away. Words could not define her, her actions could. She kept working until the fence was strong and secure. Ethan examined her work silently. Finally, he nodded slightly, a small sign of approval that made Clara's chest swell with pride. Despite these moments of achievement, Clara still faced doubt, both from herself and others. The ranch hands, though starting to respect her efforts, sometimes exchanged glances when she struggled. She overheard snatches of conversation, gentle warnings that she might not last in such a harsh life. Some townspeople even rode past the ranch occasionally, whispering as they looked toward her. At first their words hurt, but Clara had learned to ignore them. She could not control what others thought. She could only control her own determination and effort. One evening, as Clara rested after a long day, she reflected on the life she was building. It was nothing like the quiet town she had left behind. There were no easy paths here, no simple routines. Every task required effort, patience, and resilience. The ranch was alive with constant work. The cows needed feeding, the horses needed grooming, and the land itself demanded attention. But despite the exhaustion, Clara felt a deep sense of purpose. She was no longer simply arriving at a place. She was becoming part of it. A week later, a situation tested Clara's courage more than any chore or fence repair. A storm had rolled in overnight, leaving the fields muddy and treacherous. One of the calves had slipped near a small stream, its legs stuck in the thick mud. Clara heard its cries as she carried water to the barn. Without hesitation, she ran toward it, feeling the rain soak her clothes and the mud cling to her boots. She could have waited for one of the ranch hands or even Ethan to handle it, but something inside her pushed her forward. The calf was small but strong, struggling violently. Clara spoke to it softly, trying to calm it, and carefully pulled at its legs. The mud resisted, sucking at her hands and making it difficult to move. Yet she refused to give up. She worked until the calf was free, dripping wet but safe. When Ethan arrived, his expression was serious. He rarely smiled, but that day there was a flicker of something different in his eyes. Respect, perhaps, or relief. "Good work," he said quietly. Clara nodded, too tired to speak. Her body ached, but her heart felt strong. This moment proved something to her, not just to Ethan or the ranch hands, but to herself. She was capable of more than she had ever imagined. She could face fear, hardship, and doubt, and still come out stronger. The next challenge was learning to ride the horses properly. Clara had ridden small ponies in her childhood, but these were strong, wild animals trained for ranch work. The first attempts were shaky. She fell off more than once, landing hard in the dust and mud. Each fall was painful, both physically and emotionally. She sometimes wanted to give up, thinking she might never master it. But then she remembered the calf she had saved and the fence she had repaired. She reminded herself that strength came from persistence. Slowly, she began to learn how to move with the horse, how to balance, and how to guide it without fear. By the end of the week, she could ride confidently across the fields, feeling a sense of freedom she had never known before. The townspeople started noticing the changes in her. At first, they had come to watch, curious and perhaps hoping to see her fail. But day by day, their whispers changed. They saw her carrying heavy buckets, repairing fences, and riding horses with skill. They saw her determination, her willingness to work despite exhaustion and doubt. Clara did not seek their approval, but she felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that her actions spoke louder than words. Ethan began to include her more in his work, giving her tasks that were difficult but meaningful. They worked together to mend broken fences, check the livestock, and repair equipment. Through shared effort, a bond began to form. Clara learned to read Ethan's expressions and gestures, understanding his quiet ways and earning his respect. Ethan, in turn, began to see her not as an idle bride, but as a partner capable of hard work, courage, and dedication. By the end of the second week, Clara had begun to find her rhythm on the ranch. The early mornings, the heavy labor, and the constant challenges no longer seemed overwhelming. She had grown stronger, both in body and in spirit. The ranch was no longer an intimidating expanse of land. It had become a place where she could contribute, learn, and prove her worth. She understood that respect was earned, not given, and she was willing to work for it every single day. Evenings were quiet moments of reflection. Clara often sat by the porch, looking out over the fields as the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky turned shades of orange and pink, and the land seemed to glow in the soft light. She thought about her journey so far, the mistakes, the falls, the small victories, and felt a sense of pride. She had faced doubt and fear, and yet she continued. She realized that this was just the beginning. Life on the ranch would always be demanding, but she had discovered that she was capable of much more than she had ever known. In those quiet moments, Clara made a promise to herself. She would not allow gossip, doubt, or fear to define her. She would work, learn, and grow, proving not only to the town and to Ethan, but to herself, that she was strong, brave, and capable. She would face every challenge, no matter how difficult, with determination and courage. This promise became her guiding force, carrying her through long days, tough tasks, and moments of uncertainty. And so, Clara's second week at the ranch ended with quiet triumph. She had survived hardship, learned new skills, and begun earning the respect of both Ethan and the ranch hands. The whispers of the town no longer held power over her. Her actions had started to speak louder than their words. She felt stronger, more confident, and more determined than ever to prove that she belonged, not as an idle bride, but as a woman capable of shaping her own destiny on the vast, rugged land she now called home. By the third week on the ranch, Clara had begun to feel more confident in her abilities. The initial fear and uncertainty were gradually replaced with determination and focus. Every morning she woke before the sun, her muscles still sore from the previous day's work, but her spirit stronger. The early light of dawn cast long shadows across the fields, and she had learned to take a moment to admire the vast land before starting her chores. It was hard work, and some days were exhausting beyond measure, but Clara knew that effort was the only way to prove herself, not just to Ethan, but to everyone who had doubted her. Ethan started to involve her in more complex tasks. He asked her to help plan the work for the day, to manage some of the ranch hands, and even to oversee certain repairs. At first, Clara felt nervous. She worried she might make a mistake, that she would disappoint him or fail to meet expectations, but she reminded herself that learning required trying, failing, and trying again. She had already survived the hardest physical challenges, and now she was beginning to test her mental and leadership skills. One morning, Ethan approached Clara as she was mending a broken gate. "I need you to help with the irrigation system today," he said. The system was old, with pipes running across the ranch to water the fields and pastures. Some of the pipes were broken, and the water flow was uneven. It was a task that required problem-solving and attention to detail, qualities that the town never expected Clara to possess. She nodded, determined to prove she was capable. Clara studied the system carefully. She examined each pipe, checking for leaks, blockages, and broken joints. She noticed that certain areas had rusted over and needed replacement. Using the tools Ethan had taught her to use, she repaired the pipes, replaced worn sections, and adjusted the flow so the water reached every pasture. By the afternoon, the irrigation system was working better than it had in years. Ethan watched her quietly, then finally said, "You did good." The words were simple, but Clara felt a surge of pride. The ranch hands began to notice the change in Clara as well. At first, they had been skeptical of her abilities. They had expected her to struggle, to give up, or to fail. But now, day by day, they saw her tackling tasks that required skill, strength, and intelligence. She was no longer just a bride living in the house. She was a vital part of the ranch operations. The small nods of respect, the quiet acknowledgments, and even the occasional words of praise gave her a sense of belonging she had never felt before. Despite her growing confidence, Clara still faced challenges. The work was never ending, and some days seemed impossible. A sudden storm might flood the fields, a sick animal might need attention, or a piece of equipment might break at the worst possible time. One afternoon, a young calf fell ill, and the vet would not arrive for several hours. Clara stayed by the calf's side, cleaning its stall, keeping it warm, and feeding it slowly. Her hands were raw, her back ached, and exhaustion threatened to take over, but she refused to leave. She whispered to the calf gently, urging it to stay strong, and in time, the animal recovered. Ethan watched her with quiet admiration. She had shown compassion, courage, and perseverance, all qualities that could not be taught. As Clara grew more confident, she began to take initiative. She noticed areas of the ranch that needed attention without being asked. She fixed fences before they broke, organized supplies efficiently, and even suggested improvements to some of the ranch operations. Ethan began to rely on her judgment, asking for her opinion on difficult decisions. It was a slow transformation, but the once skeptical cowboy was beginning to see her not as a bride sent to marry him for convenience, but as a partner who could share in the responsibilities of running a ranch. The townspeople began to notice the change as well. Rumors of the idle bride still existed, but whispers of her diligence and skill were spreading faster. People who had doubted her came to the ranch to see her work with their own eyes. Some watched quietly from a distance, while others offered hesitant words of encouragement. Clara did not seek their approval, but seeing their opinions change over time gave her a quiet sense of satisfaction. She had taken the judgment of others and turned it into motivation. Every task she completed, every challenge she faced, was a step toward proving that she was capable of far more than anyone had imagined. Clara's relationship with Ethan also began to shift. Their interactions, once formal and cautious, became more natural. They worked side by side, Communicating with gestures and brief words, learning each other's rhythms, Ethan began to trust her judgment, relying on her in ways he had never relied on anyone before. Clara, in turn, learned to read his subtle cues, understanding when he needed help, when he wanted space, and when he appreciated her efforts. Their partnership grew stronger each day, built on mutual respect and a shared commitment to the ranch. One day a new challenge arrived that would test Clara's courage and determination. A fire had started near the edge of the property, likely from a lightning strike. The wind carried the flames toward the pastures, and the ranch hands scrambled to contain it. Clara did not hesitate. She ran to help, grabbing buckets of water and working alongside Ethan and the others. The fire was dangerous, and the smoke made it hard to breathe, but Clara refused to stop. She threw water onto the flames, dug trenches to prevent spread, and guided the animals to safety. Hours passed, and finally the fire was under control. The pastures were saved, and the ranch remained intact. Clara's bravery and quick thinking had played a crucial role in preventing disaster. After the fire, Ethan finally spoke in a way that made Clara understand how much he respected her. "You were fearless today," he said quietly, as they surveyed the burned area. Clara felt a warm glow of pride. She had not only proven her strength and courage to Ethan and the ranch hands, but also to herself. The challenges of the ranch were still great, but she now knew that she could face anything with determination and resilience. Clara's growing confidence also inspired the ranch hands. They had once doubted her, but now they looked to her as an example. They noticed how she faced challenges head-on, how she never gave up, and how she treated both animals and people with respect. Some began to seek her advice, while others offered assistance without being asked. Clara had become a part of the ranch, not just through hard work, but through leadership, courage, and compassion. She had earned her place, and the respect of those around her was growing. By the end of the third week, Clara had transformed in ways she could scarcely have imagined. The ranch, which had once seemed vast and intimidating, now felt like a place where she could contribute, grow, and belong. The town's whispers had lost their power over her. She no longer worried about being called lazy or useless. Her actions spoke louder than any words, and she had proven herself capable in every way that mattered. Clara also began to see a different side of Ethan. The man who had once been reserved and distant was now a partner in every sense. They shared laughter after long days of work, exchanged small gestures of understanding, and began to rely on each other in ways that were unspoken but deeply felt. Clara realized that trust and respect were the foundation of any strong relationship, and she was building that foundation slowly but surely. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Clara stood on the porch and looked out over the fields. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, and the land seemed alive with possibility. She reflected on the challenges she had faced, the long hours, the exhaustion, the fear, and the doubt, and felt a sense of pride. She had proven to herself that she could endure hardship, learn new skills, and face obstacles with courage. The journey was far from over, but she now understood that resilience, hard work, and determination could transform not only her life, but the ranch and those around her. Clara made a silent promise to herself. She would continue to work hard, to learn, and to grow. She would face every challenge with courage, and she would never let doubt or fear stop her. She was no longer just the idle bride the town had whispered about. She was a woman building her place in a world that demanded strength, perseverance, and heart. She was shaping her destiny one day at a time, and she knew that the best was yet to come. Clara's confidence continued to grow as the days passed, and with it came a new sense of purpose. By now she had learned the daily routines of the ranch, the rhythm of feeding the animals, tending the fields, and repairing fences. She had grown stronger physically, but more importantly, she had grown in courage, patience, and determination. She no longer felt like an outsider or an idle bride. Instead, she began to see herself as someone who could make a difference, not just survive, but actively build and improve the ranch alongside Ethan. The sun had barely risen, and the sky was painted in soft shades of pink and orange. She stepped outside and breathed in the crisp air, feeling the familiar scent of hay and earth. As she walked toward the barn, she noticed a section of the field that had been neglected. Weeds had grown tall, and the soil looked dry and uneven. She knew that if the field was cared for, it could yield more crops and feed the livestock better. Without hesitation, Clara decided to take it upon herself to improve the land. She started by clearing the weeds, pulling them out one by one and stacking them neatly to use as compost later. Her hands grew sore, but she kept going. She dug small trenches to water the soil evenly and carefully planted seeds that would grow into nutritious grass for the animals. As she worked, she thought about how much effort it would take to make the field thrive. but she also felt excitement. This was her chance to contribute in a tangible way, to shape the ranch with her own hands. By the end of the day, the field already looked healthier, and Clara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Ethan noticed the work she had done. He had always respected her efforts, but seeing her take initiative and improve the land impressed him even more. He walked over as the sun began to set and examined the field. "You've done good work here," he said quietly. Clara smiled, her cheeks flushed from the effort. For the first time, she felt not just acknowledged, but truly trusted. Ethan was beginning to see her not only as capable, but as someone whose ideas and actions could benefit the ranch in real ways. As days turned into weeks, Clara began to take on even bigger projects. She helped repair old barns that were falling apart, reinforcing beams and replacing rotted wood. She learned how to patch holes in roofs and make sturdy doors. The work was difficult and sometimes dangerous, but Clara was determined to do it right. Each structure she repaired became stronger and more secure, and with each successful project, her confidence grew. The ranch was starting to feel like a home she could actively shape, not just a place she had to adapt to. The animals seemed to sense the change in Clara as well. Horses that had been nervous around her now nuzzled her hand, cows followed her calmly, and even the youngest calves seemed to trust her guidance. Clara realized that her patience, care, and consistency had earned their trust. She smiled as she watched a mare trot alongside her across the field, its mane shining in the sunlight. These small moments reminded her that her hard work was not just about survival. It was about creating harmony and balance in the ranch life. Clara's relationship with Ethan continued to grow stronger. They worked side by side, tackling difficult projects together and learning each other's strengths. Ethan admired her determination and intelligence, while Clara respected his experience and quiet strength. Their bond was built on mutual trust and shared effort, not just words. They no longer needed to speak constantly. Sometimes a glance, a gesture, or a shared task communicated more than words ever could. Slowly, the walls between them had begun to crumble, replaced by respect, trust, and an unspoken partnership. The townspeople, too, began to take notice of Clara's transformation. Some who had once whispered about her laziness now came to the ranch, curious to see what she had accomplished. They watched as she worked tirelessly, repairing buildings, tending animals, and improving the land. Word spread that the idle bride had become a pillar of strength and dedication. People who had doubted her began to respect her, and some even sought her advice on their own farms or ranches. Clara never boasted or sought praise. She simply continued her work, letting her actions speak louder than words. One significant challenge arrived when a storm damaged a section of the fence, leaving the livestock at risk. Clara knew that the fence needed urgent repair to prevent the animals from wandering off or being harmed. She organized the ranch hands, showing them how to work efficiently to rebuild the damaged area. Her instructions were clear and practical, and the team followed her lead. Together, they worked through the rain, lifting posts, hammering nails, and securing the wire. By evening, the fence was stronger than before, and all the animals were safe. Ethan stood beside Clara, pride evident in his eyes. She had not only saved the livestock, but had demonstrated leadership that earned the respect of everyone on the ranch. As the months passed, Clara's contributions became even more significant. She suggested improvements to the irrigation system to conserve water, planned the planting of crops to feed the animals better, and even helped design new storage areas for feed and tools. Her creativity and intelligence complemented Ethan's experience and strength. The ranch was slowly transforming under her hands, growing more productive, organized, and thriving. Clara had taken a place that once seemed overwhelming and shaped it into a home, a workplace, and a safe haven for both animals and people. Evenings became moments of quiet reflection. Clara would often stand on the porch, looking out over the fields and pastures, feeling a deep sense of pride. She thought about how far she had come, from a girl arriving at the ranch, feared to be lazy, to a woman who had earned respect, trust, and responsibility. She realized that her strength was not just in her hands or her muscles, but in her determination, resilience, and heart. Each challenge she faced, each task she completed had helped her grow stronger in ways she never imagined. The relationship between Clara and Ethan reached a new level of understanding. They shared moments of laughter after long days of work, exchanged thoughtful gestures, and relied on each other for support. Ethan began to show more open appreciation for her efforts, sometimes leaving small notes or helping her with difficult tasks in ways that were gentle and encouraging. Clara, in turn, learned to trust him completely, understanding his quiet ways and the value of his guidance. Together, they had become not just husband and wife, but partners in life and work, building the ranch as a team. Clara also discovered that her influence extended beyond the ranch. Young girls in the nearby town began to look up to her as an example of courage, hard work, and perseverance. They saw that labels and gossip could be overcome through action and determination. Clara welcomed these moments of inspiration quietly, never seeking recognition, but always proud to show what could be achieved with effort and heart. She had become more than a caretaker of animals and land. She had become a symbol of resilience and possibility. One morning, Clara and Ethan stood together at the top of a hill overlooking the ranch. The sun rose behind them, casting long shadows across the fields. The barns were repaired, the fences strong, and the animals calm and healthy. Clara looked at the land she had helped shape and felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Every seed planted, every nail hammered, every animal cared for had built more than just the ranch. It had built her confidence, her skill, and her place in this new life. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of everything she had achieved. In that moment, Clara felt truly at home. Clara's journey on the ranch had transformed her in ways she could never have imagined. She had arrived as a girl burdened by rumors and doubt, but she had grown into a woman of strength, courage, and determination, coming to a place where she could contribute, grow, and thrive. The townspeople's whispers had lost their power, replaced by respect and admiration. And, most importantly, she had proven to herself and to Ethan that she was capable of shaping her own destiny with her hands, her heart, and her determination. With each passing day, Clara's confidence and influence on the ranch continued to grow. She was no longer an idle bride. She had become a cornerstone of the ranch, a trusted partner, and a figure of inspiration for everyone around her. Her journey was not over, but she had proven that with patience, perseverance, and courage, she could face any challenge and emerge stronger. The ranch, the animals, and the people she had touched were living proof of her determination and hard work. By now, the ranch had begun to look completely different from when Clara first arrived. The fences were strong, the barns repaired, and the fields flourishing. Every corner of the property bore the mark of her dedication, her patience, and her hard work. The animals were healthy and well cared for, and the ranch hands had come to trust her judgment and leadership. Clara had grown into her role completely. No longer the girl who had been whispered about as an idle bride, but a woman who had earned respect through courage, determination, and heart. Ethan stood beside her one morning, overlooking the fields that stretched endlessly into the horizon. The sun rose slowly, casting a warm golden light across the land. He watched Clara move among the livestock with confidence and care. The sight filled him with pride, not just for the ranch, but for the woman she had become. There had been a time when he had doubted her ability, when he had wondered if she would ever truly belong in this rugged world of long days, hard work, and endless responsibility. But now, every action she took showed him that she was more than capable. She was a partner in every sense of the word. Clara moved with purpose that morning. She checked the animals, making sure each one was healthy and calm. She inspected the fences, noticing a few spots that needed minor repairs. Then, she went to the fields, checking the irrigation system and ensuring that the crops were receiving enough water. Everything she did was deliberate and careful, and every task was completed efficiently. Her movements were no longer uncertain or hesitant. They were confident, practiced, and effective. It was clear to anyone watching that Clara had transformed into someone capable of leading and sustaining the ranch. The townspeople had begun to change their opinions as well. Those who had once whispered about her laziness now told others of her tireless work ethic and her ability to manage even the toughest challenges. They came to see the ranch, noting how well kept it was, how happy the animals were, and how smoothly everything ran. Some even asked Clara for advice on their own farms, inspired by her example. It was a remarkable turnaround, from being the subject of ridicule to becoming a role model and source of admiration in the community. Clara never sought praise, but she couldn't help feeling quietly proud that her work had made such a difference. One afternoon, a particularly difficult challenge arose. A section of the pasture had been damaged by a recent storm, leaving deep ruts and uneven ground. The livestock could not graze safely in that area until it was repaired. Clara surveyed the damage, her mind already planning how to fix it. She gathered the ranch hands and instructed them on how to level the land, strengthen the soil, and make it safe for the animals. She worked alongside them, using her own strength to move heavy equipment and assist where needed. By the end of the day, the pasture was restored, stronger and safer than before. The ranch hands, who had once doubted her abilities, now looked at her with admiration and respect. Clara's leadership and determination also strengthened her partnership with Ethan. They worked together seamlessly, each one complementing the other. Ethan brought his experience, strength, and knowledge of the land, while Clara brought her insight, organization, and creativity. Together, they solved problems that would have been impossible for either of them alone. Their trust in each other grew, not through words alone, but through shared effort and responsibility. In many ways, the ranch had become a reflection of their partnership, balanced, strong, and thriving because of both of them. The animals themselves seemed to recognize Clara's dedication. Horses followed her calmly across the fields, trusting her guidance. Cows and calves moved easily as she approached, knowing she would care for them. Even the smallest creatures, like chickens and goats, responded to her presence. Clara realized that her care and patience had built a bond of trust between herself and the animals, one that was unspoken but deeply understood. It was a reminder that leadership was not just about giving orders or working hard. It was about empathy, consistency, and respect. Clara's influence extended beyond the ranch as well. Families in the town began to bring their children to see the ranch, eager to teach them about hard work, responsibility, and courage. Clara would show them how to care for animals, plant crops, and repair equipment. She became an example of what could be achieved through determination, perseverance, and heart. Many young girls in particular looked up to her, inspired by the woman who had once been called an idle bride but had transformed into a strong, capable, and respected leader. Clara never boasted, but she felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that her work could inspire others. One morning, Ethan and Clara stood at the top of a hill overlooking the ranch. The sun was rising, and the fields, barns, and pastures stretched endlessly before them. Ethan turned to Clara and said, "You've done more than I ever imagined. This place, it wouldn't be what it is without you." Clara felt her heart swell with pride and gratitude. It wasn't just about the land. It was about the journey, the challenges she had overcome, the skills she had learned, and the trust and respect she had earned. She realized that she had grown stronger, braver, and more capable than she had ever believed possible. Clara had also changed in ways that went beyond the ranch itself. She had learned patience, resilience, and courage. She had discovered that hard work could transform not only land but also people. She had faced doubt, fear, and hardship, yet she had emerged stronger and more confident. The whispers of the town no longer had power over her, because she had proven through her actions that she was capable and determined. She was no longer defined by labels or expectations. She had defined herself. As the seasons passed, the ranch flourished even more. The fields produced more crops than ever before, the livestock grew healthy and strong, and the buildings were well maintained and organized. The ranch had become a model of efficiency and care, a place that reflected the hard work, dedication, and intelligence of both Clara and Ethan. Together they had created something lasting and meaningful, a home, a livelihood, and a legacy. Clara's story became known throughout the town. The idle bride, who had been sent to shame a hard-working cowboy, had not only proven herself but had built the ranch into something remarkable with her own hands. People told the story of her determination, courage, and perseverance. They spoke of how she had transformed the ranch and earned the respect of everyone around her. Clara never sought recognition, but she felt a deep satisfaction knowing that her hard work had inspired others and changed the perceptions of those who had doubted her. Ethan and Clara continued to work together, their partnership stronger than ever. They shared laughter after long days, relied on each other in times of challenge, and supported each other through difficult decisions. Their relationship had grown from initial caution and doubt into a bond built on mutual respect, trust, and shared effort. Together, they had built more than a successful ranch. They had built a life filled with purpose, respect, and love. Clara often thought back to her first days on the ranch, remembering the fear, the exhaustion, and the doubt. She had wondered if she could ever belong in this harsh, demanding world, if she could ever earn respect or prove herself. Now, standing on the hill and looking at the thriving ranch, she realized how far she had come. Every challenge she had faced had taught her something valuable. Every task had strengthened her, and every moment of perseverance had brought her closer to her place on the ranch. In the end, Clara's journey was not just about proving herself to others. It was about discovering her own strength, courage, and capability. It was about facing challenges, learning from them, and transforming both herself and the world around her. The ranch, the animals, and the people who relied on her were proof of what she could achieve. She had turned doubt into determination, gossip into inspiration, and hardship into triumph. As the sun set behind the hills, casting long shadows across the flourishing fields, Clara stood with Ethan, feeling a deep sense of peace and accomplishment. The ranch had become more than a place to live and work. It had become a symbol of her perseverance and courage. She had taken what others thought would fail and built something lasting, meaningful, and respected. The idle bride was gone. In her place stood a woman who had proven, through every action and every challenge, that strength, heart, and determination could overcome any obstacle. Clara's story became a legacy, not just for the ranch, but for everyone who heard it. It was a story of courage, hard work, and resilience. It was a story that inspired others to believe in themselves, to face challenges with determination, and to never let doubt or judgment define them. And as she looked over the land she had helped shape, Clara knew that this was only the beginning. She had built more than a ranch. She had built a life, a home, and a future full of possibility.